Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for the response. My name is Kayla Myers, and I'm a programmer and Black Creators Forum manager at Indie Memphis. The Black Creators Forum is a program that specifically supports Black artists in Memphis and outside of Memphis through a variety of ways. We have a symposium, a pitch rally that we had a couple weeks ago, some grants, and a residency and fellowship. And so I'm especially glad to be able to moderate and also be a part of this conversation with you all today. We'll start off, I think, with introductions. Also, my pronouns are she, her. We'll start off with some introductions, and also if you give some context about the specific the specific organization, and sort of programs that you provide to filmmakers, whether that's here in the region or outside of the region, sort of nationally. And we'll have space for questions, so just be kind of thinking about those as we go throughout. We have one mic that we're using though, so just bear with us with that. We want to make sure that, one, people can hear us, but also that the recording has all the audio for the beautiful things we're going to hear and the questions that you all will have. So if we could start off with just introductions and sort of what you all do.
Thank you. It's great to be here. My first time in Milwaukee, and the festival's been really fantastic. I'm Andrew Peterson. I hoard film jobs. I'm the executive director of Film North, which is an artist service organization that's been around for over 37 years in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm the director of programming for the Provincetown Film Festival in Cape Cod, and I'm an independent producer as well, so working from films between 50,000 and 5 million.
Thanks for having me. I'm also here for the first time. My name is Caitlin May Burke. I'm the co-director of If Then Shorts at Field of Vision. Is she and they pronouns, and If Then is an international organization with a focus on filmmakers making work in their own community. We focus on short documentaries, and I can also moderately capably talk about Field of Vision, which is the broader umbrella organization which funds documentary shorts, features, and occasionally a series.
My name is Gray Rodriguez. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Director of Communications at Film Festival Alliance. It is also my first time in Milwaukee. Very impressed. Love it here. And Film Festival Alliance is a nonprofit dedicated to creating a collective voice for festivals around North America. We have a membership of more than 250 regional festivals and large festivals around the country, and we are committed to community education and advocacy for those festivals to help create a better ecosystem and space within exhibition for festivals and filmmakers.
Oh, that was so good. No, thank you. Hi, I'm Kathy Suska. I am the Director of Content and Operations at the Film Collaborative. My pronouns are she, her. The Film Collaborative is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to distribution and education about distribution. So our website is very, very full of free educational materials, and we also do fiscal sponsorship and festival distribution without taking rights.
Kathy, I'm so glad you brought up fiscal sponsorship, because my next question is kind of about the specifics of what you all provide, and sort of if a filmmaker was coming to you and they wanted to use whatever resources you provide, what are those and what does it look like to kind of come to you? What should filmmakers sort of be prepared with when interacting with you? And if you could also like define fiscal sponsorship for some folks who may not have full context of that.
Oh, okay, here we are. Okay, I will try to describe fiscal sponsorship. It's a little bit of an odd thing that's super, super common, and everyone should know about it. But basically, if you are looking to raise money from a grant or a foundation, they will usually require a tax receipt for the write-off. So you either need to be a nonprofit yourself or have a nonprofit fiscal sponsor. So the foundation or the grant gives the grant to us as a nonprofit. We give them a tax receipt. We take a small percentage and pass the rest of the funds along to you. And part of the reason that that's a good system for the grants and foundations is that the nonprofits then have oversight over your project. So you owe reporting and things like that, and the foundation knows that their money is going to the place that they think it's going to. We take 5%. Some people take 6 or 7. What else should I talk about? Our educational. Are we just focused on fiscal right now, or moving?
I was going to say we do fiscal sponsorship.
You should talk about your fiscal too.
I was going to say, because I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of fiscal sponsorship. How many people here know about it or have taken advantage of it? Okay. Great. And I'm sure Indie Memphis, does Indie Memphis have that?
Unfortunately
No? Okay. Well, one thing I'll just say is, like, when I talk to a lot of filmmakers, it's one of many tools, fundraising tools that you can put in your quiver, and be sure that you have it, because you never know who you're going to meet. What there was one of our members had met a wealthy woman. I used to work for a very wealthy woman. Wealthy people will often tell you, I don't have cash lying around. It's tied up in things. In the conversation with somebody where they got that first no of like, no, I don't have any funds, they were like, how about stock? And they were like, well, this woman donated stock on a quarterly basis, and over 3 years gave this one filmmaker over $1 million. And it's a way to pivot in a conversation with a funder. My brother, I was making a short film, said, can you give me some money? He gets $500. I said, you get a tax write-off. He was like, let me check with my accountant. He said, here's 10,000. It's like, this is a way to pivot and move up what somebody's giving you. Now, this is the most that I'll talk about, so forgive me. So it's because the services these guys provide, I think for what Film North does, this is the biggest thing we can share with you guys, is just, it boils down to friends, family, fans, foundations, is what I say. Those are the places that strangers rarely give you money to make your film. And you can go through crowdfunding, and that's, and people might give you $50 here and $50 there, but this is a way to up it a little bit. So your friends and your family, in 1 degree removed from that, I think are really good people to hit up for fiscal sponsorship and say, here's what I've got. Foundations, some foundations don't allow you as an individual or you as your project to apply, but they allow Film North to apply for your project. And then fans, we had a hockey film. They got on a hockey website. This is where strangers come in. And it's sort of like, I'm making a film about the first Indigenous hockey player. And on the hockey website, strangers are like, that's a story that needs to be told. Stranger, here's my money. And it's sort of like they raised a lot of money that way. It's limited in who it can go to and where it's really affected. That's where I find the best sort of cross point.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, there are a lot of ways to get money for a film, but money that is donated does not have to be paid back. And money that you don't have to pay back is better than money that you do. So it's really something you should consider. And there are tons and tons and tons of different kinds of grants out there. And there are lots of places that also collate these grants. So like on our website, we have a list of grants. And they can be super specific or super broad. So read through the grant lists, find where they live, get on those newsletters, and keep an eye out for the ones that suit your project, because you have to please remember, money that you don't have to pay back is better than money that you do. Okay, next.
And Caitlin and Gray, do you want to talk specifically about the things that you all provide? And then also something specifically about the Film Collaborative. I do know you all use the Nonfiction Core app for your fiscal sponsorship. Yeah. We can talk about that in a second. But yeah, Caitlin and Gray.
I'm closer, so I'll get to do this. So If Then does an open call for applications several times a year, and that is for different initiatives that have a lot of different shapes, which means that you will probably be eligible for some and not all of them. We were founded with a focus really on regional filmmaking communities, so we would do a live pitch in the Midwest at a festival. We'd select 5 projects from that open call. It's a jury decides the project. We give them $25,000. They come into the program. I'm your executive producer. You keep your copyright. You get final cut of your film, and then we provide support in the creative elements of that, some distribution and festival strategy. So that's one way we work. We'll also do year-long labs. Sometimes those are centered around a theme. Sometimes they're a little bit broader. We're looking for folks that are making work in the region or have a strong connection to their community, but we won't, if we're doing a lab with, say, Hulu, we're not necessarily saying it's Midwestern filmmakers. It's anybody, and we want a Milwaukee story to come from a Milwaukee filmmaker. That's a sort of similar structure in our creative participation, but we're also bringing in other career development mentors and giving you other support, doing a live event at a festival. And this is sort of the range of the work that we're doing. We also will do a virtual editing residency. We're giving a range of grants, and these are all open applications. There's no barrier to entry. Similar, I think that this group is gonna wind up talking about the Doc Core application. That is a resource that exists on the internet. You can get it right now, and I actually suggest it as a development tool for everyone if you're working in nonfiction to get it and start filling out answers as just a creative effort. it doesn't have to be perfect, and every application is not going to be identical to that, but it's basically a lot of funding organizations came together and said, these are the type of questions that we're going to be asking, and these are also the word counts. So I suggest anyone who's in any stage of wanting to pitch documentary work or apply to grants to fill it out for yourself, because you're going to be a step ahead when you do find that open application to be able to slot it in. We'll occasionally have a question that's specific to the opportunity, but like 9 out of the 10 questions you'll already have done. And then you can also use that, like your little Google Doc where you filled that out, and revisit it and say, okay, I didn't get into this. Let me think, like, was my answer to this clear? Or has the project changed, and am I saying what's right about the project at this stage, or am I using old language? But I think that it's a really amazing resource to talk about, because you like could literally go get it on your phone and start doing that. And it's the part of filmmaking that's just typing, but is also figuring out how to express the answers to those questions is also creative development. That like, if you find that you're really emphasizing one thing in your synopsis, is it that your synopsis needs to change, or is it that your edit needs to fit actually what's interesting to you about the project? So I fund short documentaries, and then I'm going to talk about that as the bonus that everyone can apply. We don't have a particular calendar. You can just sort of follow us on social, and we'll be posting new initiatives when they come up.
Thank you. I'm like staring at her earrings. They're so cool. Just quick shout out. I actually, at FFA, we don't offer fiscal sponsorships for sponsorships for filmmakers. But what we do is kind of, I would say, more of a fringe benefit, in the sense that I like to think of us as sometimes a gateway between Film Freeway and the filmmaker. We're kind of like this middle piece that is a really great way to find festivals that will screen your films, or that are more reputable than maybe like sifting through what's on Film Freeway. This is kind of a great access point to see that these are festivals that are at least dedicated to learning more, to improving, and to connecting with other size festivals to share resources and just get better as operations are concerned, and also programming. And so I like to just tell people to start at our site if you're looking for festivals to go to after you've completed your run at Milwaukee or Light Reel, just giving a shout out to a board member in the audience. But we hope to expand our resources for filmmakers, but I would always say that, like, if you are looking, that's a great place to start. We are working on this big project on kind of having a database that's more searchable, in the sense of like, do you pay filmmakers to travel? Do you have grants? Do you have, panels? Just all sorts of things that are benefits you don't think of when you think of just going to a festival and screening your film. I like to tell people to really investigate what other benefits are out there to going to a festival. Who are you going to meet? Who are on the juries? Who else can you connect with that will help further your projects in the future, and also maybe meet some new collaborators that you wouldn't otherwise. So I just love regional festivals, because I think they are sometimes overlooked, because people get stars in their eyes about these larger tentpole festivals and don't really think about the connections you can make in these smaller communities, because they are smaller and because they are taking the time to program films and bring in filmmakers and distributors and people that you would just not meet otherwise. So that is not really what you asked, but I'm not talking about money. I just think this is like an added value that we offer, to be able to highlight all of those festivals in a really succinct way. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Gray, because film festivals are expensive, travel is expensive, and you want to be able to get as much out of the experience as possible. And Film Festival Alliance is a really great resource. And we can also talk a little bit later about some of the surveys and research that they have done, as well as just sort of about the general film festival ecosystem. That's also good for you all to know as filmmakers, or if you're a filmmaker who's also a film worker, because I think a lot of us wear multiple hats. And something that I'm really curious, we've talked a little bit about the nonfiction core app. I think filmmakers also just need to know what are the sort of baseline materials they should be cultivating for themselves when they are applying for grants, applying for fiscal sponsorship. What are the things that they should kind of have in line as materials? And the other thing I will say about the nonfiction core app, I was just at Getting Real, which is a conference that the International Documentary Association runs, and they're in the process of updating the core app. There was specific feedback that people have been able to give, and so there should be some changes coming to it too. I think there has been some questions about how long it is and what the questions are sort of providing for filmmakers. So just something else to keep in mind. It may change, but I think what Caitlin's suggestion of like really looking at it and see what it is now is really helpful. So yeah, sort of what do you all think filmmakers should be prepared with? What are the pieces of things that you think they should come with? And whoever feels comfortable respond first.
I mean, I can say something first and then. Sure. Okay, the documentary core app is, it's a little bit onerous, but it's onerous? I don't know. Yeah, ugh, fuck. Onerous. Thank you. It's honorable and onerous. And there's a lot of questions in there that will really ask you to reflect on your relationship to your participants and your subjects and your, power and positionality and all that, which is really important to think through. But also, we use it as our application for our fiscal program. So once you fill it out and you've been accepted into our fiscal program, you've already gone through a round of conversing with our director of fiscal sponsorship about your application and whether it makes sense and what you have in there is, fulsome and reflective of the project and, how it looks from a third person point of view, especially like, for example, your budget. Like, say you think, great, I'm like a jack of all trades. I'm going to do the cinematography. I'm going to edit. I'm going to direct. So like, I only need one like item line in my budget for myself. That's gonna look bad to someone looking at your budget. They're gonna be like, this filmmaker doesn't even know enough to budget for an editor? Like, you have to put that in there. And the other thing that you need to keep in mind is that if you don't put it in the budget, no one is gonna give you money for it. So they're not gonna just offer you more money than you're asking for. That almost never happens. Like, God bless you if it does, but think these things through. And I have to say, we're dedicated to distribution. Please always include a distribution budget in your initial budget for the film. It's really important. If you make a film and at the end you don't have any money left to get it out in the world, what's the point? The other thing that just as like my personal, grandstand, whatever, budget for accessibility. Budget audio description and closed captions into your initial project and keep creative control over those assets because they're really important and you're leaving money on the table if you don't, and it's not okay to not have those as part of your project.
I'm going to be like real 101 action guy, and then I'm going to ask Andrew a question to make sure that if there are fiction folks, because we're a little doc skewed, the doc core, or what you should be preparing, will have a log line, which is 50 words about your project, a synopsis, which is closer to like 100 to 200 words. We get into a little bit more detail. They're going to talk to you about your artistic approach, which is where you're talking about style. They're going to talk about a topic summary, which is where you put those details about the background and the like current relevance and sort of the like larger world context. Generally, there's going to be a request for a budget. Their doc core now, I think, does have questions about your accessibility plans. Also, there are resources online that are either free or low cost for budgeting conversations. They're never going to be specific to your project, and that's something where working with a producer or just like having a consulting producer come in and talk you through it, because budgeting is a creative exercise. It's something where your film's budget is going to be unique to your film because of the needs of your film, and so that's something where you want to pull from your broader community to build that. But if you want like just a brass tacks, this is how you set the thing up, look online for those kind of workshops. And if you need budget numbers, there are a bunch of like Filmmakers with Disabilities Forward Doc has resources that has different vendors, and you can contact any of those vendors and say, I'm thinking of doing a feature doc. Can you give me a ballpark for how much your services would be? So this is not, that question of, if someone in a position of like a gatekeeping position of authority is like, why did they budget $50 for their audio description? That's a $10,000 element, and you just put it in because you didn't know the number. That's not fair to you, but it's totally appropriate for you to go out to people and say, like, I am trying to create this and get those numbers. And like, the internet is vast and full of great answers to questions. And I'm really curious, 2 to 3 minute work sample, or a really, really good reason why you don't have one for nonfiction. And I'm curious about it for fiction. Like, what if, because I haven't applied for a grant with a fiction project. I mean, you have a draft of your script. Budget is probably really similar. I'm curious what those other elements are that folks are looking for, because the pitch is totally different, because it's a little bit more like you're asking for money up front in a different way than for doc, where you can be doing it incrementally.
Yeah, there's so many things to unpack there, but in general, grants are skewed toward docs. They're seen as more fact-based. They're seen as more, I'm changing the world, I'm more authentic. Oversimplifying versus a zombie film. It's hard to get that funding through a grant structure. So understand the grants, though, the good thing is that they'll come forward with who they are. So make sure your mission and values aligned, and look to that. And there are no two same granting organizations out there, a family fund versus a corporate foundation versus something. As filmmakers, we know that we speak differently about our projects to an actor, to a producer, to somebody else. You've got to learn how to speak to a grantor, to a funder differently. What makes you excited about your project might not be what makes them excited about your project. So, but then to your point, what you really need to do, one thing about Kathy's is, like, I find as filmmakers, we negotiate against ourselves. We put in the best case scenario budget, put in the worst case scenario budget. For me, I add for a narrative film, I add an extra day of shooting. I put no exclusions in my contingency, and I up my overtime. Those are 3 line items that up the budget in a way that gives me padding and doesn't get overly scrutinized by the funder. But in a narrative world, I think what we have to do is we have to accept what we're up against. My experience is, like, I went to NYU Film, I went to grad school at NYU, and I was like best filmmaker or best director, whatever they gave me. And I got a lot of people asking me for my script. I sent the script out, and I'm like, I'm hot, I'm best director, look at that. And then years later, I was the guy on the other side of the desk getting that application coming in, and it was sitting next to Todd Solondz and Terry Gilliam and all that. You got to find ways to enhance your value. And the other is that with them, they're creating the lookbook, they're creating the rip reel, they're creating these other elements to it. And I was that filmmaker going, why do I have to do that? Don't I have enough proof points? Nobody has enough proof points. We produced a $5 million film for Lawrence Kasdan with Diane Keaton, Kevin Kline, Elizabeth Moss, the list goes on and on and on. He couldn't get $5 million. Lawrence Kasdan can't get $5 million with that cast. It's like, this is a business that is broken, toxic, and weird. And it's sort of like, and we've got to, but that said, he came forward with a lookbook. He came forward with all these other things. He's sitting on a mountain of money. He's sitting on Star Wars credits. He's like, I play the game like everybody else. Here's all my stuff. So as us coming up, play the game the same way. You've got to put, and it does come into when you're sitting on the desk, just so that you're competitive with everybody else. So that's, and it does come through in grants and in your work sample selections and all that. Sometimes your work sample that you love best isn't best for that grant. It's like find the moment that really sells you. Sometimes it's a grant for an artist grant. Then you're putting forward yourself as an artist. What is the work sample that shows me as an artist? If it's 2 people sitting at a table with standard coverage, but you're in love with your dialogue, it's not going to get you the grant. It's like any 2 filmmakers would shoot that film the same way, that scene the same way. Where's you? So that, and I think that goes for docs as well with work samples. But that's in general.
Yeah, I would say the same thing for the things that we provide at Indie Memphis, which is a mix of both doc but narrative projects. And we don't actually use the nonfiction core app for that, but we do have the same sort of particular questions that we ask about your relationship to the story, your past history as an artist, and we're very much open to the fact that you may not have worked in film before. So I think also keeping that in mind too when you're applying to particular things. Are they looking for artists that have sort of an established practice? Are they more open to filmmakers who this is maybe your first or second sort of project that you're working on? And again, sort of the things that we're mentioning in terms of work samples, really thinking about what how much does the work sample match the language and the narrative that you've written in your application? Because I think that's something that I've seen from like things that we've looked at. The work sample doesn't quite match what the intention of the project is. And to what they were just saying in terms of an artist support grant, it also depends on who you're working with. So we're like a film organization that's very much in the support of independent filmmakers and really wanting to work with filmmakers at whatever level they're at. So also keep that in mind. That experience could be different if you don't have that sort of one-on-one possibility. There's some places, like I know people want to apply for like the Sundance grants or like the development, those things. A lot of people apply for those, and there's a little bit less space to actually get feedback. But you have the power to ask for feedback. You have the power to be like, what did not go well in this application? What did I not communicate as well as I should have? And how can I change that for the next time that I'm applying for something? So just wanted to also name a few of those things. And I think also because both of you kind of work as filmmakers also, and so I really wanted to hear from you all about how you as filmmakers has influenced the way that you work in artist programs, and how I think I'm very much a fan of thinking about what are the ways that this, you've already kind of talked about this, is kind of broken, that there are very fundamental issues with the way that funding works, with the way that people have access to funding. Knowing how to apply for grants is a skill, is a practice. I mean, film organizations hire people to do those things. And so I'm curious to hear really from all of you about the ways that you're thinking about bucking up against some of the sort of standard practices that also exist in sort of this artist program structure, and then also how you all as filmmakers influences that as well.
Well, because if you go first, then you're not competing against something someone else said. So I think that like the core app itself was designed to solve problems and like to make things easier for filmmakers to apply to multiple places. Unfortunately, it has kind of grown into its own beast, but like you said, there's like a lot of conversations going on about how to make that more God, what's the word I'm looking for? Efficient, more sleek, more like less onerous for the filmmakers to fill out. And then there's also like some additional conversations going on about maybe building a platform where the film teams can just put their stuff up one time and then the funders will look at that, as opposed to having you have to make individual things. So keep an eye out for that. I mean, that could be years down the road, it could never come. But funders are aware that the process is burdensome to filmmakers who are not being compensated for that and often don't even get the grants that they're spending all this time and effort applying for. So I don't know, I'm putting that prayer out into the world.
And I'm not a filmmaker, but as I mentioned, our goal of our membership and the people who are working on these grant programs in terms of our festivals are really, what we are offering for them is hosting those conversations and like making you aware that they are happening, I guess, and like cultivating this space for the people who are making those decisions to collaborate and like kind of try to solve the problem together. So that's our piece.
I am a filmmaker. What a hideous mistake I made. I've made 11 features. I joke that I've produced everything but car commercials under $1 million. And I think it's been really interesting in being on the other side and sort of being humiliated by some stuff I did, and also trying to infuse the work with that. But a big part, a really core, the reason that I describe If Then as a fund and filmmaker advocacy organization, and the reason behind that is just like, and you can kind of hear it in how I'm talking about this, is just transparency. What we all just did in we're gonna say .core application, and if you've never heard of that, did we lose you? Do you now think this is not for you? If we don't say what things are clearly, is that not for you? Are there incredible artists who are waiting for permission to come into a space, and because the phrasing is confusing, who are we losing? I think that's I think something that I bring to the work, and I think the other side of any of this, and I was gonna steal the mic from Kayla before, and this is a nice way into it, is that getting to the point where like a Sundance that's getting 3,000 applications for a particular grant is reading your work and like maybe giving you notes, but maybe not. You have filmmakers in your community who have applied and maybe gotten funding there, or know someone who does, or have applied for other funding. And like, that is an incredible resource. And it doesn't always have to be like looking out at the tent poles. And I think that this is my like been around the block thing, is that I know that everyone's just a person and most people in this space are fairly generous, and that asking someone politely if they can take a look at your thing, or asking them what their experience was in working with someone, applying to something, doing a program, and taking a broad look and saying like, this person didn't get funding, but they PA'd on so-and-so's project that did, would they be comfortable making that introduction and saying, who in Milwaukee is my resource, instead of always like, there's someone in New York that's gonna give me my shot, there's someone in LA that's gonna give me my funding. And having that first round of everything come through the like, people here who can also say, I was in your position, I was literally in this city, I was doing this for the first time, and walking you through that step and walking that in like that way in, because most people are very friendly to those introductions. And like, artist support organizations are there to support artists. Like, we're not necessarily, I also say like, I know how to read an application and say this person is figuring out how to answer this question, but I think, and that's a privilege of doing something that's looking for earlier career folks. For something where it's someone more established, like that budget needs to show me that you can make the film in 6 months. And I think that that's also sort of like defining the different opportunities for yourself and a realistic look at where you and your project are. But also know that for any of like grant support or these different like labs, organizations expect you to apply multiple times. If you get rejected once, it's not that your movie is garbage and you should quit and open like a dry cleaning business. It is that there are 3,000 applications and 6 of them got it. And being number 7 and being number 2,078 is the same level of rejection. So then going back and saying like, who in my community can look at my language? Is this like a budget problem? And like, again, going back to like the folks that are already in your corner is the way that for that next application, we are all tracking things for that growth. Like, we are looking to say like, oh, you applied, this wasn't the time. And I've been at If Then for 5 years, and we have like at least 15 filmmakers that I have read their applications for years, and then it became time to fund the project. And like, I'm so psyched that we got there. And it was never because the work wasn't good. It was just that like, when there are 3 to 5 of you and 300 applications, you're not number 3, but you are always there.
Yeah, the resources, there are more resources out there than you may realize. And one thing that frustrates me with a lot of filmmakers is they don't take advantage of them. So out of Minnesota, there's a national organization called Springboard for the Arts. They have, take a look at them, they have mentors, they have people that will review your application. You can go to them and say, I'm preparing a creative capital grant for a film. Do you have, is there somebody there who can review, who's gotten that can review it? They have a sliding scale for what you would pay for that. Sometimes it's free. It's based on your resources. We give out, at Film North, we give out 4 mid-career recognition grants, $25,000 each, and and part of that process is giving them the feedback afterwards, and they can schedule a session and do it. With 100 applicants, maybe 10 do it. And it's sort of like, it's the same application every year. It's sort of like, you know, so, and we had somebody who placed dead last one year with that panel, got it the next year. You don't know which panel's gonna have your champion. So it's sort of like, but the feedback you get from we put in a grant for one thing. I was working with an artist, and his work samples were great and they loved everything, and he just made this careless mistake. He said, like, it was a photographer, and said, I see the world in a way other people don't. And they were like, I love his work in that, but is that really what he thinks he sees things specially and different? I've seen this type of work 100 times before. We took that one line out and he got it the next year. And that came from the feedback. And they said, you know, we called them and they said, this is what tripped you up. You know, and it's sort of like, granting organizations should do that, and if they don't, demand it. It's sort of like, you know, what are you there for if you're not going to give me this feedback? I think that it's, you know, it's something you have to ask for. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably ask a couple more questions and then we'll put it out to you all, because I'm sure there's a lot that you all are thinking about. I really want to ask specifically about a couple of things. I know, Andrew, that Film North is membership-based, and with that membership comes access to equipment and other things. And so I know that some of those things are open specifically to filmmakers in Minnesota, but I think you also are open to the region too. Yeah. So if you want to talk to that, and then Caitlin, I'd love for you to talk more about sort of the pitching and the lab experiences that you all have provided. And then Gray, we were talking a little bit before this about like the surveys and the research that Film Festival Alliance has done, and it would be great to sort of hear about how that has happened for you all, and then also how filmmakers can kind of tap into that as well. And then Kathy, I know that you work with like the festival non-theatrical distribution side of things. So if you want to speak to that with filmmakers as well, and sort of how you support artists in that way. So yeah. Andrew, you want to kick
Sure, I'll start. Film North we're in the middle of building a new media arts center. And we've raised $14 million. We're now looking to buy the building next door, create a stage, and all these other things. But these are not spaces that we're going to have a 54-seat cinema. We're not programming the neighborhood cinema. This was created as a resource. This was created as a place for you to test your DCP, to do a cast and crew screening, to self-distribute your film. We have enough in our market. We have enough theatrical options. The idea that we would step into that space, step on other people's toes, and do this when there is a community that needs something. We're also a commercial-based industry with Best Buy and Target driving a lot of the prices in post-production houses to these really high rates. So we have this, we don't have something in between working at home and spending $20,000 on some light post. So we're creating a space that people can use. If you're a member, we have an editing classroom with all the bells and whistles with 12 stations. It's like if we're open and it's free and you're a member, it's like just come in and use it. It's sort of like, Dear White People was shooting their film in Minnesota, and they were quoted for their continuity editing during production. They were quoted $20,000. We said $500, here's a key. It's about removing barriers and creating space for independence. And what is true independence? I love film independent, but they define an independent as being up to $30 million. This is, what is independent? And when we start looking at, I like that we're talking about grants and fiscal sponsorships, because these lower budgets are where you have control. And it's sort of like, funding structures are tied to pipelines. So it's like, certain funding requires certain things with it. And also certain budgets, we've alluded to this, require certain things. If you're gonna work at 5 million versus 50,000, you've got a whole different world of people to report to. So Film North is about helping you navigate this. And I think that, it's really hard for us and I'm also a film festival programmer. Film festivals operate, I love them and I'm a supporter of them, but those of us that program them and work with them know that it's like, this isn't an intuitive process for filmmakers to understand. Festival strategy is different for every film. So it's sort of like, this is what we're a service organization that is there to help filmmakers navigate a toxic, and inequitable system. So I have little moments of existential crisis when I'm talking to people about saying, like, well, here's how a system that doesn't value an artist is you navigate that, but that's studios. But if you can get yourself down to fiscal sponsorship, friends, family, foundations, and fans supporting you, you're being lifted up to make your film by a group of people that want you to succeed and that want you to retain 100% control of your idea. So, and be you one all the time. So, when you look at Ava DuVernay and Barry Jenkins' films both being under $100,000 the first film out, that's a reason behind that. It's like we have a system that is not creating space for us. We have to push our way in, and you push your way in with a film that really shows you. So it's sort of like, anyway, that's what, I think film service organizations, take advantage of them. You've got a great resource here. Just, you know what you need. Now just go and do it, but also be smart in what you create. I've met with a filmmaker that had a great film, first film, tough film, $10 million budget. I said, maybe this is your second or third film. That's the tough news you need to hear right now. Write the $100,000. How much can you raise with your friends, family, foundations, and fans? Write that script and treat your crew well. This is not just about how I can make a film and kill everybody in the process. Last thing I'll say is I encourage people when they make that low budget film, say Blair Witch Project, make the corresponding tier 1 budget. If you go and sell it for $100 million, everybody gets a bump to the rate they should have been paid. It's sort of like, this is, my favor should not result in your Hollywood Hills home and me still struggling to pay rent.
How can you work with me? Here are the ways. In order of how can you get money or my brain? And I'll do Field of Vision too in case people are working on features. So If Then and Field of Vision are at the same company, we operate separately. Field of Vision will, if you subscribe to our newsletter, all of what I'm about to say is in there except for these first couple of things. Field of Vision commissions short documentaries. They will have final cut. It's around a $25,000 to $35,000 commission. It is an open rolling process, which means that it will take forever to get back to you. If you're doing urgent journalism, we are not your funder. But you will enter through a portal. There is no barrier to access other than having the internet. Field of Vision also does just totally normal grant funding for feature documentaries. If Then and Field of Vision both also, let's say seasonally, it's also kind of a moving target. We'll do office hours, which is something where you will sign up, you will get a half-hour slot with someone on our team based on what you are curious to learn more about. It is not an opportunity to pitch us for funding. It is literally just a, like, do you want someone who has a lot of experience in the field to talk to you for 30 minutes and answer a question that you might have? It's contained. We won't look at work beforehand. We won't follow up afterwards, but that can be about literally whatever you want in the nonfiction space. And that is open to everyone in the world, so it is open to you. If Then is going to do, as I said, a real range of programs. We are traveling to do workshops that are centered on a theme. So that could be how to pitch your project. That could be documentary shorts distribution. That could be documentary development. That's something that we do at festivals. And we also occasionally partner with regional filmmaking organizations to do that. There's no money, but just that's my brain. We will also do sort of like smallest scale. We'll do a 6-week editing residency. It's a $5,000 grant. It's a very moving target because it depends on what partners we have. It's not something that is always offered. We'll do about 5 weeks of that online. It's a cohort of filmmakers, and it's actually filmmaker-led. So you will be receiving feedback from your peers, guided by an editing mentor who will then give their feedback to you separately. But the idea is that we can all be learning from everyone in the space, and there isn't just one sort of authoritative opinion of what makes a great film. In a perfect world, we then would do a work-in-progress feedback screening at a festival. And that's a $5,000 grant. All of our grants, it's your money. You can spend it on ice cream. We hope you spend it on the movie, but you don't have to report back to us. You have no obligation. We also we were started as a pitch organization, which was regionally focused and now might be topical. This is a good example. We have one coming up at Mountain Film at the end of the month. That will be 5 projects that are all on a theme of connection to nature from all over the US, including the territories. They are getting small development grants. They will get pitch training to be able to present their work, and then they will do a live 7-minute presentation in front of a jury. One of those projects will receive a $25,000 grant. Actually, that one's $30,000 grant. They will, in a traditional pitch for us, we would then come on as your executive producer. We will watch all of your cuts. I like to say that in that case, I'm your 11 a.m. producer, not your 2 a.m. producer. If you have an emergency, you should have someone else on your team who's handling it, and I can talk to you about it tomorrow. But I am there to use. That's the using my brain part. And then the sort of like longest term activation, we will do, as I mentioned, labs. That's around a $25,000 to $30,000 grant as well. You're generally selecting cohorts of 3 to 6 projects. Sometimes that's around a theme, sometimes it's regional, and it is sort of the one track of it is the completion of your film within 6 to 9 months, technically a year. And the other track is it's some form of career development, and whether that is like working with your cohort, whether that's prepping work to, prepping work in development of the piece for a feature, or is it, seeking distribution. We give everyone across the board festival and distribution consultations, and then also often work as sort of a like pro bono sales agent to try to get the work in front of folks, because we've done 110 films, and so we're sort of like the centerpiece of being able to go out to all of those people who are distributing short documentaries and say, here's some of the work that we've supported if this is interesting, which is a little bit easier to get in than a cold email. A good thing to know if you do have a short documentary, those folks generally have a portal or are open to cold submissions. They're also looking at festivals, but we just sort of centralize it. And everything I just said, if it comes up, sometimes there's a theme, sometimes, like last year we did a pitch that was sort of an outlier with NBC. It was a $100,000 grant. It was a commission. The film will be on an NBC property, and it was focused on using like a new lens on the NBC archive. So it was going to be a film using archival material in an unusual way. So like that one's obviously very specific. Otherwise, we're fairly open. If we're doing the Midwest, it could be, you know, a personal animated documentary to a social issue film to something that's more experimental. We like to be fairly formally agnostic.
Thank you. I will talk a little bit just about picking my brain. That seems like what we've been doing, and then also about our surveys, which will kind of be peppered into there. But I would say, like for us, for Film Festival Alliance, being less black and white and being more of a tool that you can use to connect with festivals, I think the value that we add is just, again, like we've done a lot of research. We're very careful about who our members are in a way that we don't police them. We're not an accrediting organization, but we are mindful of what festivals are members of Film Festival Alliance in a way that helps with your festival strategy. So we have a really great resource for just searching through where you should submit, what's a great regional festival, what's a great tentpole, and how your program might fit within there. We've done a lot of research on the workforce side to make sure that these festivals are paying fairly in terms of who's working on the team. We did a large compensation study in the last 2 years just to kind of examine what the landscape looks like in the industry for programmers, how much they're paid, for executive directors, and kind of getting also that demographic data on who are watching these films, who are making the decisions. And then for the filmmakers, are they giving out awards? Are there cash prizes? Are they offering these education programs? And so it's just, for me, a really great resource for you if you're looking at that festival strategy to start with our site, as like I said before, kind of a between Film Freeway and between just, you know, submitting everywhere. I also like to ask filmmakers. I spoke to a group at Sundance who was really keen on getting into Sundance, and I think that's really awesome and exciting that that's a goal, but really digging deep on why that's your goal and just not discounting the value of the community building that comes from regional festivals, from these kinds of experiences, and from the knowledge of the programmers here to really know Milwaukee. I think something that was really beautiful that happened on the last panel was an audience member was talking about the impact a film had on her. And like that is because of the team behind Milwaukee Film really being thoughtful about what they're programming for their community. So it's just like thinking about that when you're looking for where to go with your film is really important because those programmers know their community well. They can look at your film and pair it with the community in a way that's much more impactful than just getting into Sundance. Like I think that sounds really cool. And of course we want that for everyone, for their film to be seen as much as possible. But just like thinking of the long game and like the connections you can make on the circuit or the people that are brought in to these regional festivals and how you can really take advantage of the mind power that the community is being offered through these local film festivals. And I think there's one other survey I could talk about, which is our accessibility survey. We have an accessibility scorecard that we've unveiled with Forward Docs, and we're working on having just kind of an examination of how accessible these festivals are so that we can pass that information along, not to shame, but to help provide tools to festivals to improve their overall experience for everyone. And so anyone can take the survey. I make sure that Milwaukee will send out a link too, so they're a part of it, but we provide that feedback back to the festival to kind of, again, enhance the experience and just work towards a more equitable experience for everyone. So yeah, I didn't talk about money at all, but I think I offer like a more strategic service, like I said, where we can help you a little bit in your search for where to go next. No pressure.
I'm the last. I guess I'll talk briefly about some of our educational resources on our website. So we have something called again, we're dedicated to distribution. I know a lot of people are talking about helping you get your film made, and once it's made, you have to distribute it. So we have the distributor report card, which is one of our newest resources, where we anonymously interview filmmakers who have worked with various distributors, and then we collate those answers into like a Zagat-like form. So if you are thinking of going to work with like Gravitas, say, you can go to our website and read real feedback from filmmakers who have worked with them. The reason it's anonymous is because for about 10 years we've been trying to do this project not anonymous, and no one will go on the record with their name attached to it because they're afraid of backlash. So that's just another instance of how broken this industry is. Anyway, we also have the digital distribution guide, which is a tool where you can go on and look at all of the various platforms around the world, and you can filter by territory, by genre, by whether you're a doc or a fiction or a feature or a short, and you can see which platforms might be a fit for your film, and whether you can approach them directly, as Caitlin was mentioning, or whether you have to go through an aggregator or a sales agent to get to them. So that tool can help you kind of just get the landscape for your film. We have a lot of other resources too, like a blog, and we have like a conversation series, and we're always coming up with new stuff. In fact, on May 2nd and 3rd, if you don't mind, I'll tell you about our distribution days, which is a virtual conference. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to our website and sign up. We're also going to film everything, so if you're not free on the 2nd and 3rd, you can just watch it afterwards. But we're going to have like various panels about all different kinds of distribution-related topics. We're going to have an accessibility panel. We're going to have one about festival distribution, one about educational distribution, and more, which I can't remember at the moment. So I spend most of my time working in our festival distribution program. In that program, we really, really believe, as you do, in all the regional festivals, in utilizing the global festival circuit as the first revenue-generating distribution window for your film. So traditionally, the first window has been considered theatrical, but we believe in festivals. And also, I mean, especially for documentaries, theatrical has become very difficult, and it's usually, I hate to say it, but you often lose money doing theatricals, whereas for festivals, you can actually generate revenue if you charge screening fees, which is a whole other beast, which I won't get into. But it's, do you want to say something?
No, well, after you.
Okay,
Right
we'll see.
Yeah.
So we focus on issue-oriented films, so human rights, social justice, environmental, mostly features. We have started working in the short space a little bit. Those are not as monetizable on the circuit, so we generally, we do those on an extremely boutique basis when they have exceptional impact potential, and we do those ones for a fee. The features we work on commission. We don't take your rights, so you always retain control of your film. You can always sell the film, and we'll stop working if you tell us to. And we are generating revenue for you and working completely on commission. So the whole point is that it's been very intentionally designed to be super, super low risk for the filmmaker, because there's no upfront cost, we're not taking your rights, and it's cancelable anytime. So the festival circuit, we believe in it, we love it. It's done so much good for so many films, and you really are getting your film out there on the big screen in front of audiences. You're building your career, you're building buzz for the film, you're getting press, and it's just, some people think you get your premiere and you sell the film and you move on, and that's just not really the case nowadays, at least not for 99.99% of films. So the strategy, the festival strategy is really important, and keeping in mind that that is your theatrical for the majority of films will help you realize how valuable it is. And just coming to the festival and representing the film and meeting with people, that's your career builder. So I think in a nutshell, that's how that program works. And I'll give up my time to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, like with the regional festival and getting more eyeballs in front of your film, and also like potentially making money through the screening fees, is that, especially if you're splitting box office, like you have to think that a regional festival as part of your strategy is also kind of part of your marketing strategy, because those teams at regional festivals also want butts and seats. They want those conversations to happen. It's a good impression for filmmakers. It's a good impression for the cinema experience. And so it's just, I always, again, recommend, if your goal is for many people to see it, to try to look at these regional festivals who have marketing people who are also going to be doing community outreach for you, and it kind of helps you fill the theater, helps you have more meaningful conversations around your Q&A, and just adds like more buzz because people have seen it who it matters to. And that's why I just also love like the community partnership aspect of regional festivals, because those eyes are on the ground here to help like with the shared goal of making money, of course, but also getting your story out there.
Putting on my festival hat for Provincetown is like, you know, right now we're blocking our lineup, and I find myself so frustrated with, there's an old way of thinking, a 90s way of thinking, which is sort of like I premiere at Sundance, South by, Tribeca, and I play nowhere else, and I'm waiting for that big deal to come in, and then I'm going to get theatrical. Doesn't happen. It's sort of like, you know, you're going to get a streaming deal for the most part, and you have now given up, as Kathy said, your chance to engage with audiences like this, and your chance to see your film on a big screen. And it's just really, you know, but just, you know, do a little research. Like Provincetown, for instance, I mean, you might think first off, LGBTQ content, yes, that's the majority of our audience, but we're also in a fragile ecosystem by the oceans. We also have, this is the first point of contact with indigenous peoples. This is the largest Portuguese community in the country. Do a little research and be like, I made that film, you should want to play it. A friend of mine made a film about hunger, and he was coming up with a festival strategy, and I was like, well, Sonoma's festival's about food, they should care about hunger, you know, put into there. And you're getting in front of the right people. You're getting in front of people that care about this and then lift you up. That film then ends up on Apple. And Sundance isn't the only ticket. It's like there are a million other tickets for your film to find success and to find its audience and to find its money.
Thank you all so much. I want to really quickly just define a couple things. A sales agent, just for people who may not know, is an intermediary between multiple things. They can be an intermediary between you and a festival. They can be an intermediary between you and a distributor, and they can be the one to sort of broker a potential distribution deal for you. They can also be the one to help you manage rights outside of the US. So there's international sales agents who will work on selling your film or getting your film shown in other parts of the world. And they may take a percentage, they may take it's all very particular to the sales agent, and distribution advocates, which is another good resource for you all, actually just did a series of podcasts about different aspects of the industry, and they did do one on sales agents. Sales agents, all similar to film festivals, similar to film organizations, all have very particular ways that they work and operate. So they're another thing for you to just kind of be aware of and research. They could be helpful, they could not be helpful. It's really dependent on what works best for you and your film. And a screening fee is also, some film festivals will revenue share with you, some film festivals will provide a screening fee to you for screening your film. It's one way that you can make some sort of revenue from your film, because film festivals don't exist without the work. They don't exist without you wanting to showcase your work. And before we open up to questions, I'll give a quick rundown of the things that we provide through the Black Creators Forum. Indie Memphis does do programming for all filmmakers, with a specific program that I manage is for Black artists in Memphis and around the country and really internationally. We have a symposium that is, all the programs that I'll mention to BCF related are free. We do not charge any sort of like application fee. We don't charge any fee for any interaction with programming. But our symposium, which is a hybrid symposium that happens virtually and in person, is sort of similar like these artist services panels. We kind of try to explore as much as possible, but from the perspective of Black film workers, industry workers, critics who work in the film industry. And that symposium is usually around our film festival. We also have a pitch rally, and wonderfully, Caitlin and Meryl were a part of that process and talked with our filmmakers who were a part of that process. The pitch rally is more so open to filmmakers based in Memphis. What we did also open it up to people who applied through our residency and fellowship, and that was similar. We had a pitch training process. The filmmakers pitched in front of an audience and also had the ability to sort of have the judges ask them questions, sort of see what their projects were all about. And then our residency and fellowship, the residency is for filmmakers from outside of Memphis. So if you have a feature-length script that you are wanting to work on, unfortunately right now it's only open to fiction. the things that we kind of think about that artists need is like time and money, and so the residency is meant for that. That's a $7,500 grant. We oh yeah, thank you. Rich is back here reminding me of someone to talk about with the residency. Raven Jackson, who directed All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt, which you all may have seen last night or whatever night of the festival. She was our resident in 2019, and she had the time and space to work on the script for All Dirt Roads. She had a really beautiful pitch deck that she actually created for it. And that's the kind of our goal with that particular project, especially for artists of color and artists who aren't from backgrounds where you have like resources. You need the time. A lot of the artists that we work with in Memphis, and a lot of the artists that I'm sure everyone on this panel work with, you're juggling multiple things. You're juggling the fact that you have to work, and so that's the sort of the point of the residency and sort of all of the programming that we provide through the Black Creators Forum. So those just wanted to sort of highlight those things. And I think now we're in a space where if folks out here have questions or things that they're sort of wondering, and we'll get the mic to you. So we'll start with you right here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to Milwaukee. This was very, very, very good. A lot of information. I have a lot of questions, but I'll try and start with thanking you for the prayers on the core application. We really need to make that better. But one of the, and I recently got a rejection, and in that rejection letter it said, do not ask for feedback, we cannot give you feedback. We got 300 applications, so do we still write back to them? And the other thing I learned is that if you don't have a producer attached to your film, that grant funding is impossible. Is that true?
One quick thing I meant to say earlier is like I love and I hate grants. Grants make us compete with other filmmakers and put us in a position where we're it feels a little icky at times. First, to your point, it's just like the studios that say we don't take unsolicited material. I've always found a way for them to take the material. It's a short email that says like, I know you don't do this, but here's quickly. I was named Best Director at NYU. I did this, and I've got this person in program. Would you take a look? Every once in a while you'll get that yes. But with that, you can try and just say, I understand you don't. At least give them the space where you say, I understand you don't give feedback. It would be really meaningful if I could, I have these specific questions. Is there somebody who could maybe give me that? You might get a no, but give it a shot.
I was going to say, I'm not going to disagree. I'm going to take a different angle on that. We don't give feedback on If Then because the entirety of the If Then team is in this room. And it's a capacity thing, which doesn't mean that there isn't maybe a later conversation. I think that if someone is not, I think it's totally worth it if it's like, I have these two specific questions to ask, but if someone has explicitly said like, our team doesn't have the capacity for it, that's also a part of the process, that's a like, show someone who has gotten it or show someone else in your community and say like, we can only speculate, but what feedback do you have? And not to the people who explicitly said like, we can't. To your question about how impossible it is without a producer, I think that feels really individual to me. I think that depends on your past work, and I think that is, I don't know that everyone necessarily needs a like full-bore lead producer on their project, depending on their past experience. But if you haven't had other work that has maybe existed in the space for that, like the reason that people are looking for that is that they want work that they know they want to support work that's going to be completed. And so if that person isn't there, but you have someone who's willing to like lend their name as a consulting producer, it is just this idea that like, if we give you a $50,000 grant, we're not going to find out in 4 years that like, you're not capable of applying it. And we're looking into the like, what else have you done or who else is in your corner to make sure that the work exists. And so it doesn't have to be like, you have to lock in the person who's going to be in the creative marriage that a producer-director relationship is, which for like a decade. But it is the like, if you've never done this thing before, who else, like what fellowships have you done? Like what are the sort of proof, like the proof that you exist in the space and that you are, if granted, going to like do the thing. But this is, as you just saw, like the two of us have a very different perspective on the same thing.
And I 100% agree. It's like it's a capacity. There are reasons behind it, but I do find that 9 times out of 10 you might get that no, I can't. We just can't. But every once in a while you'll get it. You'll be like, oh, I remember your application. I'll give you a call, or something like that. It's not the official thing. It's the unofficial thing. But then in that realm of work in competition with grants, attaching a producer, recognize that if you don't, there's probably 10 applicants that do. And how do you now stack up against them and their idea of who they're going to give their funds to?
I would say it also depends on the specific thing that you're applying for. If it's something that's like a research grant or like an early development grant as well too, that could change that as well. Yeah, right here.
You've given us a lot of information, You've given us a lot of information, which we all really appreciate. But what I need now are websites. What are your websites? How do we get them? Read them off so I can write them down and then get in touch with you later, because we can't do it here right now. So what are your various websites?
Mine is indiememphis.org, INDIEMEMPHIS.org.
filmnorth.org and ptownfilm.org.
Fieldofvision.org. Also, if you go to this panel on the website and see our affiliations, I think just the name of the organization.org is a good starting place.
Everyone ready? Filmfestivalalliance.org. And you can also follow us on Instagram, FF Alliance.
We're at thefilmcollaborative.org, shockingly enough. Oh, yeah, you got it.
Question in the back.
Just really quick follow-up to that. Doesn't Film Collaborative have a special site where all the
Kathy, will you repeat the question?
He said, doesn't the Film Collaborative have a special site where all of the grants are collected? And I said, mm-hmm. So if you go to our site, there are some tabs across the top. If you click on the fiscal tab, there's a lot of stuff sort of, I won't say buried, but if you click through the various sub-tabs, you're going to find a lot of resources, including a list of grants that you can apply to. If you sign up for our newsletter, we send out monthly newsletters where we say which grant deadlines are coming up. Luke is, yeah. And yeah, we have, click through our site. We have tons and tons and tons of resources. We have sample budgets for under the fiscal. We have all kinds of stuff. Ask me about it later. You're my fiscal, so thank you. I know, I'm also Luke's fiscal.
I'm also going to plug a page on our website since that's allowed. We have a member directory on our site, which is where you'll find our membership of festivals, just to kind of peruse and see if there's anywhere that looks exciting. It also will link out to their individual sites. And our newsletter as well that goes out monthly will keep you apprised on any news in the film festival industry, but also we try to highlight programs that are happening for filmmakers. Since we don't offer too many ourselves, we still do put together a list, as well as if you're interested in working in the film festival industry, we highlight those opportunities as well. And then try to also share some recaps of festivals that have happened from both the operational experience, but also the filmmaker experience. So, yeah.
I will also add the Black Creators Forum newsletter, which I'll be honest, had to take a pause for pitch rally planning because there are 5 people on staff at Indie Memphis. Does also include similar sort of resources, grants for filmmakers of color, other grants that are happening sort of in the industry as well. So, any other questions?
I just want to plug Kara Ogburn, who is the artistic director of Milwaukee Film. She is the board president of Film Festival Alliance, and so I just want this community to understand how she's just such a leader in our industry, and that might you might not realize it maybe being here, because I just have worked with her for many years, and she is an awesome resource that like everyone here is so lucky to have access to. And so not to blow up her inbox, she's one of the busiest people I know, but I would say lean into the programs that the Milwaukee team is offering, because you have one of the best leaders, and Bridget, like this really great team here that has a lot of industry connections. And I'm sure that, yeah, give her a round of applause. It's just really incredible to see what they've done, and just remembering that that team is here, and you can, again, not to like tell you to email them a lot, but just know that they are well connected in a way that I'm sure would help you.
I get paid for you guys to
Yeah.
email me, so please email me.
But they do a great job like highlighting Milwaukee in the greater film festival community. So like I just am so blown away by what I've experienced here as a visitor this weekend, and hope to be back and offer some events hopefully in the future here. But yeah, just remember that's a resource that you're lucky to have access to here. So yes.
Yeah, right here.
Thank you guys so much. This was so informative. I was like writing notes, but also trying to keep eye contact and listening. For those that like are just in the early development stage, have an idea, want to get it started, do you guys have any like top tips of like, this is the first thing that you should be doing? Or like, I know we talked about the like the pitch deck and the doc app, but like if you're kind of new to this, like is there like one thing? Yeah, I know it's a big question.
You're often asked for resume, artist statement, work samples. They all have to speak together. It's like your artist statement is who you are, why you do what you do. Your resume is like where have you been. Your work samples are the proof. It's sort of like, so they all have to speak together. Sometimes I find them not speaking together, and sometimes we create a resume. And I mean, for an artist grant, I've seen resumes that have their waiting experience. It's sort of like, because it's their resume, and they're like, oh yes, ask for my resume. You have to have a different resume. It's sort of like, understand that those three things have to work together. So if your artist statement says that you want to, you're making work, in this, like we had somebody who applied to us who's had a lot of past success in documentary. Here's my documentary heavy resume. Here's my artist statement that talks about this, and now I gave you one of my 3 work samples is an experimental film or a narrative, because I just want to show you what I can do. They didn't ask for that. It's like, they all work together. You've got to have a story.
I think regardless of whether you're doing fiction or doc, I'm trying to think of what is a first thing, and it's a free first thing, and it's a thing that you can do tonight or always. Ask someone if you can tell them about an idea that you're thinking about, and pay attention to their body language as you talk about it, because they will ask you questions, they will lean in when they're interested, and when they get bored, they will also communicate that to you. And that is you can fine tune for yourself, what you're interested in talking. If you find out that you're like, okay, well, I'm doing it about this cider place, and then you wind up talking just about the graphic design all the time and not about the getting a flight, maybe that's where your interest is going. Or if you start talking about the graphic design and everybody is lost and not paying attention, what is what are people responding to and what are you responding to? If it's really early, and that's something that you can do universally with creative work, and especially if you're in a space like this where everyone is an artist or is at least interested in films, always ask. No one wants to be brought into someone's creative process, or if they just want to talk about a weird bird that they saw. But most people are yeah, I do want to hear about your cool idea. And you're it's super early, but, and then that is your first test ground to what you care about, what everybody else might be interested in the thing you're saying, and it's a free development process.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think being able to ask yourself the questions of what am I trying to say? What is my work going to say? How does it look to me currently? If you're making a film, especially, the questions that people will often ask when you're reading grants, it's does this feel like a film? Does this feel like something that needs to be in the moving image? And if it doesn't, does it need to be something else? Or does it need to be another kind of format? And I think also thinking about what lineages are you a part of? I think, it's always more interesting to me to see artists that are really thinking about where you may fit in and what has inspired you previously. And that just tells me that you're someone who's like thinking about like what you're coming into, what you could do differently, or how you can continue to sort of shape how things continue to go. Because I'm a big fan of like artists that are pushing things forward, that maybe we've been talking a lot about how things function now, but maybe there's a way that you're imagining a different world or imagining a different sort of structure. So I think asking those, like, even those just like basic questions, and like Caitlin said, like saying that out loud to someone and seeing how they respond. And that's like, it's not a free thing in the sense that you're still taking your time and energy, but it's something that's not gonna require you to like spend money to do.
She shouldn't make fun of me. I just want to say, like, you're doing it. You're here. You're trying to get the lay of the land. You're trying to meet people. So, you know, you've already started. And there, like I said, on our site, there's tons of free resources. They're everywhere. So just start somewhere, and it'll lead you to the next step and the next step and the next step. So again, that stuff is not free in the sense of there isn't any labor or time involved, but they're free in the sense of they don't cost money. So hopefully, you know, you feel a little bit more armed to go out there.
If there aren't any other, oh, do you have another question?
Thank you for this opportunity for another question. You said there are many artist grants out there. I only know of Creative Capital. Is there any other grants which just go to the artist and not like?
Oh, did you gonna say that? You mean specific? You mean specifically something that's like not project specific? Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that some of those, it depends. Like, and I'm like racking my brain a little bit because, and this is sort of a big conversation in the field, especially in nonfiction, is like, what is true artist support, which does not have to be, you know, you can submit a project, but we're not selecting we're not looking to fund the project, we're looking to fund you, the artist. I think that a lot of those are happening more for like mid-career artists. Black Star has is it the Grief Fellowship or is it the yes. Yeah, so it's a mid-career for like artists of color and it's not project specific. I'm trying to think of other ones, but I think that is also potentially something to look for in terms of like regional arts funding or just like general arts funding where it's like supporting you as a creator in whatever the thing is, or might be tied to more of like a residency or a fellowship that not NEA. NEA and NEH, which are an absolute beast, are very project. Most of it is project-based, but I think that there are, I would be looking for more like identity factors, that is a like, I'm at this stage in my career, I am a like, something that is, and also things that maybe are a little bit more sort of like formally agnostic in that they're not saying like, I need this to be a film as much as like, I need to explore this idea, I need to explore this topic area. I think that research grants could also work in that space where if you're doing a research grant, you might find out that you aren't making the work or that the work should be a podcast or it just shouldn't exist. But that's a little bit less tied to like the completion of the project. It's a great question because I think that it is not a substantial resource. Like Creative Capital is the main one because it is also, for folks who don't know, it is like lots of forms of art. You are granted it once ever in your career. So some things, you know, you can apply with a lot of different things, but like something becomes your Creative Capital project, then like that's it. And then you can live in their alumni space but not get other funding. Whereas like if you apply to Sundance for a film, for a documentary, and you are in, you know, one of their lanes, you can get funding for fiction, you can do some of their labs, like it's not limiting to, because it's all based more on the work.
I think you can also look to like film, like identity specific affinity groups, like sorry, the things that are coming to mind for me right now are doc related. I just went to a doc conference, so I'm sorry. Like ADOC, which is for Asian American documentary filmmakers, Brown Girls Doc Mafia, which is for women and non-binary filmmakers of color. Those are maybe another space that potentially could provide some of that is like artist specific. But I think what Caitlin kind of just described may be the best sort of option. And Black Star, which was also mentioned, and they also have a seminar that they do that is free. It wasn't virtual this year, but that's another resource. And they just actually announced a pitch that has a very hefty amount of money for a nonfiction short film. It's like $75,000. So if you or anyone you know who's interested, Black Star specifically for filmmakers of color, though. So, yeah. Well, I think we're almost out of time.
First, before we head out, because our lovely partner here, Pomona, they are closing up, but I want to get a round of applause to our panelists today. Yet again, another conversation that could go on for a couple of hours, and I do want to be respectful of two people's time because I know that they need to go to the airport, but I would like to invite all of you over to Hacienda where we have the Festival Lounge. We are doing a mixer with a local group called Motion Makers. They are part of Black Box Visuals, if you know of them. It's a group of motion graphic artists that we are bringing together with our filmmakers here, so I encourage you to continue the conversation down there at Hacienda Taproom. And again, thank you all so much for coming here, investing in each other and investing in yourselves, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.